If all goes well, this will be my last video on this subject. But, yes, in my last video, I discussed how maybe media is maybe not controlling us, but is subconsciously leading us to believe that certain behavioral traits that an advertising company or that other media companies portray are acceptable in some way, shape, or form, because these behavioral traits, subconsciously and consciously, they seem to be, they don't seem to be very harmful on the surface, because on the surface they don't look dangerous at all. They just look, like anything else. Like, they're targeting us, so I can target them. Ha ha. If they can do that, then I'm going to try and do that and see if I can do that. And since they get away with it, not only since they get away with it, but because it is widely accepted, and because there's nobody speaking out about it, and because there is no law or religious principle or any moral principle for that matter speaking out against it in any great way, since it is so accepted, then clearly I can do something like that. So last time I used the example of how, the video games and violence doesn't really apply, because that is seen subconsciously and consciously by us as something that is morally repugnant, something that we know is morally repugnant and that is against the law. And so we're subconsciously and consciously, we are not going, for the most part, most sane people are not going to see something like that and mimic it. What we mimic are behavioral traits that we see that are not against the law, that are not portrayed as morally repugnant or anything of that nature. And this targeting stuff, we've allowed it to happen for so long in media that we don't even realize what's happened. We don't even realize that they've gotten to us subconsciously. Well, they've gotten to us in a really big way that has honestly changed the face of our society for the worst. Dawn of the Dead, perfect example of, commentary on something like this. They've turned us all into zombies. And if you don't see how they've turned us into zombies, if you don't understand specifically how they've turned us into zombies, then you're still fucking one of the zombies. I hate to say it, but that's the truth. And that's what I'm trying to get to the heart of here, is that, I want people to be more informed and to understand that you don't have to be a zombie, that you can understand what's going on here and why it is repugnant and why it is disgusting and why, if we want to move forward and progress as a society and as a culture in this country, we need to understand how this is working, why it's working, and think about and start talking about how we can change it for the better in the future and make sure that this isn't the way that we move forward into the future. Because right now there's no discussion. There's just no discussion about this. Nothing. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody is even bringing up the concept that there's something. Well, people are bringing up the concept that there's something wrong, but they don't seem to understand what's wrong. And that's what I'm trying to bring into the arena, is an idea of what might be wrong here. And I think I have a valid argument, honestly. We see what they do in targeting us. It is not told that that it is wrong to us in any way, shape, or form. So obviously we are going to think, well, if they can do that, then I'm going to try and do that. A lot of people, whether they realize it or not, do have that mentality at some point in their lives. If they can do that, I'm going to try and do that, because I want to be the smartest guy in the room too. We all have a desire for intelligence and for knowledge and learning at some primitive level. So when we see something like that, we think, I can learn from that. I'm going to take what they did and try and apply it to what I'm trying to do over here. So, perfect example of how that works in what we're doing in our society today um, would be YouTube Partnership Program, of which I am a member. What a big fucking hypocrite. This guy. But yeah, the YouTube Partnership Program, which for most people is an excuse to turn their YouTube channel, and I don't mean to call anybody out. I don't mean to say what you're doing is wrong. Honestly, a lot of people, and especially in the YouTube community, this I would not say is an example of what is wrong for most people. But for some people, they try to turn it into, some kind of a commerce thing where it's like once they've become a partner, now they have to produce videos all the time, even if they're not really quality content. Now they have to produce videos that they think people will like. They don't produce the kind of videos that they used to produce, that they produced in order to get where they are. They produce videos for the consumer now. They produce what they think people want to see. They aren't doing it out of their own artistic abilities anymore. They're doing it out of a desire to make money. And the greatest literary minds, Greek writers from hundreds of thousands of years ago, were some of the first people to bring up the idea that that's not art anymore. It ceases to be art. It ceases to be meaningful in discussion when it is something that is done for something, for survival, for this, for that. Um, I agree with that to a large extent, but at the same time, I also believe that it is possible to do something for money, but to still maintain your own personal style and your own personal artistic integrity to a certain extent. Now, you lose some integrity maybe, but that doesn't mean you lose it all. It doesn't even mean you lose a lot of it in some cases, is my personal belief. But that is just an example of how we see something that other advertisers, that advertisers and other media are doing, and when we get the chance to do that, when we say, "Oh, they're doing that, I want to do that," that we um, copy their behavior and we become a lot like them. Um, we imitate their behavior. I'm just saying this to bring up the point that yes, there's not, you can't even deny it, that this does exist, that we do definitely imitate this behavior. It's not like video games. It's not like violent video games. This is most definitely a proven case where we do imitate this type of behavior. And I think that's the problem. That's what I'm trying to, that's the message that I'm trying to get forth here, is that we are imitating this behavior that we see in media to target people, to target subgroups, to place people into groups. So, like I said in my last video, now that it's almost 10 minutes into this video, I'll get to the political and religious arena here. See, I'm not even going too far into the political or religious thing here. I'm just another example here of how you can see this playing out in the world today. My, concrete example, the abortion debate. What do you see in the abortion debate in politics in this country? You see politicians who are trying to tell people what they can and can't do based on religious doctrine. Because what is the debate against abortion? if not an entirely religious doctrine. There is no moral, you know, there is no strictly moral, non-religious concept that states that, abortion is wrong or that life begins at conception or anything like this. All of this has stemmed, I would argue, all of it has stemmed from a religious standpoint in some way, shape, or form. Because even if you come to some point to some decision that it is morally wrong and that morally repugnant belief, that belief you have that it is morally wrong has nothing to do with any religion in any way, shape, or form, even if you believe that, it is the religion which has informed you in some way, shape, or form of that moral opinion in this particular case. Because, well, most people in this country are Christian. Most people in this country are Christian, and Christians don't believe in abortion. So they use the media to their advantage, and you can see that all the freaking time. There are plenty of examples of how Christians have used the new media, God and gospel to their advantage to bring in more sheep. No offense, that's your own term, sheep. Bring in more sheep to the fold, and to convince people of something that may or may not be right or wrong. Usually to convince them that something is wrong. There's this intense desire on their part to make it so that there is no distinction between morals and the Bible. You'll hear it all the time from people who aren't even religious in this country, that morals stem directly from the Bible. This is how good the Christian message has gotten in this country, that they have convinced people that all morals, all human morals, stem directly from the Bible. The way they make it sound, it is as if there were no morals and no beliefs of right and wrong or anything like that until the Bible was written. That for thousands of years before the Bible was written, everything was chaotic and there was just no moral anything. And the reason I think they think this is probably because of the imagery they see in the Old Testament. They literally believe that there was no morals before the Bible, that there were no beliefs of what is right and what is wrong before the Bible. And they think that that has inspired the law in this country, the moralistic law. And in some cases it has, but most of the moralistic law that has been inspired by religion in this country has been inspired in the last few decades, or, well, in the last century, and not in the first few centuries of this country when it was first being formed, which they like to claim that it was. They like to claim that this has always been a Christian country. And most of our founding fathers were not only slave owners, but they were deists. They were not Christian. They did not believe in Christianity. They were deists. Completely different religious belief. So, that whole concept that this started out as a Christian nation and has always been a Christian nation is, I'm sorry, but it's bullshit. But they have convinced plenty of people that it is not bullshit, that it is the absolute truth, so that even if these people don't believe in everything Christian, even if they aren't die-hard, true believer Christians, they have convinced them that morality came from the Bible. This has always been a Christian nation, and that we should enforce the beliefs of Christianity on the nation because of that. What they fail to talk about is how, of course, there is a separation of church and state in this country, and imposing your religious beliefs on um, on the people of this country is unconstitutional. Uh, that barely ever comes into discussion at all. So I just like to point that out. Imposing your religious beliefs on others in this country through law is unconstitutional. It is unlawful to do that. But more than anything, what have I been saying here? Imposing their will upon others. They're trying to, they have their own special subgroup that they belong to that is the biggest subgroup in this country. And they are trying to impose the will of their subgroup on another subgroup. They are targeting other subgroups with their will and imposing their beliefs and trying to get them to believe what they believe, swindling them through buzzwords, through all sorts of things, through imagery, through rhetoric, trying to convince other subgroups in this country, other people in this country, of something that simply isn't the case, trying to convince them that it's okay to put something into law, like a law against abortion, that is completely founded in a Christian religious belief, even though technically that's unconstitutional and would never hold up. That would be thrown out within 10 to 15 years. You could try doing something like that, but it would not last, and ultimately it would end up pissing off maybe not a lot of people, but pissing off people and making people's lives a little bit less happy and a little bit more miserable, which in a country that purports to be all about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, I find morally repugnant. But that's a little bit of a digression from my main point, that they're targeting people because they have seen other media forms in the last few decades targeting people, and they say if they can do that, I can do that. Our subgroup can do that to impose our will religiously on others. Never been allowed before in this country. Well, I don't want to say it's never been allowed before. It's obviously been allowed in this country before. But every time it has been allowed, it's been, unarguably wrong to do that. It's been done, and some of those laws still stand, and that disgusts me. But that's not going to make me shut up about the fact that what you're trying to do now is just as morally repugnant and just as wrong. And if your God or your Christ were to see you doing something like that now, and using media and using politics and using concepts that were derived from a desire for money and from selfishness in order to impose your will upon others, I don't think that your God or your Christ would be very happy with you. Just to speak directly to the religious fundamentalists in this country who might be a little bit upset with what I'm saying, I hope you understand that I'm coming from a place of understanding, and I'm trying to get you to understand that what you're doing in this case is wrong. And I'm also trying to get you to understand that where it's coming from, what you've been doing and why you've been doing it, how you have been fooled by the media to be convinced that it's all right to do this, that if they can do it, I can do it. That is a digression to past cultures that have always failed. just as everything I've been discussing so far in these videos has been a digression to past cultures that have always failed due to sexism, racism, and all kinds of isms, due to hate and violence and misunderstanding and imposing one's will against another. It doesn't seem on the surface, like I said, when a corporation or a advertiser tries to get you to buy their product, and you say to yourself, if they can do that, then I can do that. It doesn't seem on the surface like it's a bad thing for them to be selling you a product. It's not a bad thing for them to be selling you a product, but the way that they're selling you the product now is drastically different than the way that they were selling you the product before. And I believe personally that method, that their new method for their new sales pitch has gotten into our minds subconsciously as a culture and as a society, to the point where we now believe that it is acceptable to behave the same way that they are behaving. Even though, if we really thought about it, we'd understand that, no, it's not okay to behave like that. And what gets me is that it's not just races. It's not just a subgroup of a certain race. It's not just a subgroup of a certain gender or a certain sex. It's not just a subgroup of a certain political party. It's not just a subgroup of a certain religion. All of these groups have been targeted and have been, as a result, targeting others. All of these groups have fallen into this behavioral trait. And that, I believe, is one of the biggest reasons that we are now in the state that we are now, regressing as a culture and as a society to, sadly, a morally repugnant, disgusting society that I continually have issues with and continually find myself having trouble reconciling myself with, because I understand that I'm a part of that too, that I can't just remove myself from that. So the only thing I can do is to talk about it and to open up the discussion and maybe try and get people to see that there is something going on here, or just to share my beliefs that there is something going on here. And maybe the way that I'm doing that is the same way that the sales pitch works, and I'm a huge hypocrite, but it's the way it works sometimes. So anyways, thanks for watching. Peace.